So when I prepare this Dharma talk, I contemplate of my practice. So today I'd like to share my practice with you. The topic is practice of Ilwon-san and how we can keep our true nature in our day-to-day life. So I'd begin my talk with Master Daesan III, Head Dharma Master's Dharma words. It is a part of our hymn, Won Buddhist hymn, number 191. Flowers of heaven and all humans fully blossom in this world. Peace will prevail, peace will prevail. Hence, thousands of Buddha and 10,000 Bodhisattvas sprout in this order and open the gateway of blessings for millions and trillions lives of sentient beings. So there will be many great enlightened beings and many people who can selflessly serve the public. This is a really beautiful song, and I was in college, we sang this song very often. And I just translated this morning. I hope that we can really translate it well so we can sing together this song. And I read this message again. I thought it is the wish of all great masters for a future generation. In the same way, in our founding motive, Won Buddhism, Master Sotaesan said, our founding motive is to lead all sentient beings who are drowning in the turbulency of suffering to a vast and immeasurable paradise by expanding spiritual power and conquering material power through faith in religion based on truth and training in morality based on fact. This is the founding motive of Won Buddhism. So I think those messages really clearly relate to each other. So I'd like to ask you a question. Have you ever seen flowers of heaven and all humans? Not flowers in the ground, but flowers of heaven and all humans. And have you ever lived in an imaginable paradise in your life through your spiritual practice? Maybe some of you have that experience. If we have the same vision and vow with these great masters, it will come true in this world through our day-to-day practice and by all of our sincere effort. So it's not for future generation, it's for us, here and now. So I had a small realization of the flowers of heaven and all humans a few days ago. I joined the virtual workshop on Foundation of Interfaith Leadership as a panel. And there are many people from different parts of the US, and they have all different religious backgrounds. And I shared my experience and practice related to interfaith work. And I realized that people are smiling and nodding here and there. So this little small square box, the face, is kind of, they're smiling, I can really see the flowers blooming here and there. It's like a miracle. Wow, so when our mind is really in peace, and when I'm really honest to share our practice, the sincerity, that honesty really make us connect to each other. The heart-to-heart transmission, mind-to-mind transmission of Dharma. So that's why Buddha raising the flower and one disciple got the message, even though without words. So when our mind in peace with this, our true nature, the Dharma will transmit it to others. And their heart is really open, and that's the heavenly flower. And they are the flowers of all human beings, really appear in this world. So I realized that although we do not share the same religious faith, we can share our internal peace together when we dwell in our Buddha nature. So when people understand the Dharma in their hearts, there are more chance to apply the Dharma in their day-to-day life. So my main message was that internal peace and bring the peace in the world is our same goal, regardless of our faith. And I'm working for that practice together, and people really understand. So the Master Daesan's wish of there are tens and thousands of Buddha and Bodhisattvas sprout in this order means that when we really practice this Dharma and share our practice with others, that will spread out and that transform people's life. So whoever has mind can practice this Dharma. We are physically in this Won Buddhist Temple of Philadelphia together, but this order includes all human and all sentient beings, not just limited ourselves in Won Buddhist Temple, regardless of their faith or ethnicity or culture or race. We can practice the Dharma together, we can nurture our Buddha nature together. Every one of us has happiest memory in your life. I'd like to ask you, what is the happiest memory for you? For me, always is related to feeling of like coming home. So when I was in college, after I decided to become a minister, live in the communal life, and once a year, we rarely go back to home to see our family. It was very, very great joy to see our family. And when I assigned to other temple, local temple, and then whenever I go to the headquarters of Won Buddhism, made me feel go back to spiritual home. So very happy and peaceful. That's why every year, Chuseok, Korean Thanksgiving Day, or Thanksgiving Day here in November, people go back to home regardless traffic or travel fair. See their family, just be themselves in their hometown. In the similar way, we are, all of us, looking for our spiritual home, for peace and happiness in our lives, spiritual home within us, not somewhere else. So we are building our spiritual home in our heart, day by day and moment by moment of our practice. Sometimes the home is not strong enough, so cannot endure strong wind or rain. So there could be the damage, and we need to repair it and improve it more and more when we face strong sensory condition or trying situations. We can find some part of our practice that needs to be improved, right? So this great chance and opportunity to practice, and every sensory conditions are great resources for practice, finding out what needs to be done for our practice. So one of the common cases for questioning in Won Buddhist scripture said that, what is this practice which is not separated from the self-nature? So you may see that question, and this is the question that we need to ask to ourselves. You may hear about one of the Zen koan, ordinary mind is the way, or Tao, or everyday mind is the way. Have you ever heard about that passage? Yeah, it's very famous in Zen Buddhism. And Master Changsan more clearly explained this ordinary mind in our scripture. So you may read this passage. Master Changsan's Dharma verse, chapter 7, verse 45. Even means that the ancient Sun Master said that the even and constant mind is the way. Even means that there is no differentiation between high and low status or between things and oneself. Constant means annihilation of the gap between past and present and the transition between being and non-being. This refers to none other than our own self-nature and our true nature. It's none other than the great way of universe. So let's think about these words. The ordinary mind, everyday mind, or even and constant mind. All those things are the same translation from the same word, 평상심 in Korean. So because of translation, we can understand differently, but it's all indicate the same state of mind, our Buddha nature, our mind ground, the Dharmakaya Buddha. So let's keep this even and constant mind as much as we can. So Master Chongsan said, if you can clearly comprehend just this truth of even and constant mind, even means there is no differentiation, high or low status, or good or bad, or mine or yours, right? So fairness, and treat them equally. And consistent means that there's no stopping point of grasping, or avoid, or ignore it. We are in the moment, present moment, and with our very presence of ourselves, our true self, no discrimination, and really being with all other living beings. So when we use this mind, even if one has not yet fully awakened this truth, one can put into practice this even and constant mind according to the situation. So Mr. Chongsan said, therefore we must simultaneously inquire into this even and constant truth and apply well this even and constant mind in our daily life. So this is the message, what Mr. Chongsan wants to say. And so we need to contemplate what is the state of mind, even and constant. The master, Zen Master Dogen said, to study Buddhism is to study ourselves. To study ourselves is to forget ourselves. It was a very famous phrase. It means we are doing what we should do with no mind. No mind refers in the Buddhism that state of mind that is devoid of attachments or thoughts that interrupt the flow of what's going on in this present now. And also constantly being present here and now. So those two elements of mind keep in this our lifetime is very important. And so when we keep this state of mind, I realize that we can really have in our peaceful mind and also create peace in my life and our environment. Very small example, like what I felt is when I see something to clean up in the kitchen, I just came back from home, from school, and then came back home and find something need to clean up. I just clean up with no mind because I know it needs to be done and I can do it. But sometimes the arising disturbances first. Like, who did this? Why didn't clean it after they use it, right? So that disturbing mind is coming up. So if we hold on to that thoughts, even though we are clean up, but our mind is not happy, and keep looking for who did this, right? The thought is lingering in our head. So that's not real practice. So we need to practice letting go of disturbances, delusion, and wrongdoings in my mind. Acceptance, openness, and remember that our mind ground is originally free from disturbance or wrongdoing, or delusion, or chanting, or deep breathing, or walking outside, or take a deep breath in and out. So be center ourselves. Come back to your spiritual home. Then do what needs to be done. Or just observing the impermanent nature of the all phenomena. It just can be happen, but we do not have to hold on to it. So we can find peace of our mind. That's the way to cultivating and nurturing our Buddha nature. So I have experienced once someone got angry at me. I did not do anything wrong at the time. So I was just there witnessing the presence of anger from the person. But I was not affected by that anger at all. It is like a heavy, rainy day. We are staying home and looking at the rain outside. So we don't have to go out and then wet ourselves with rain. So I experienced the simple truth that we don't have to be affected by anger, delusion, or wrongdoings when we face sensory conditions. And the rain stops when it is time to stop. So it's not forever a thing. So when time comes, it stops. And we stay home and wait until that happens. And because we are not wet, we are not affected by anger. Next step, when I see that person, I have no trace in my mind to deal with that person different way. The same mind, same respect can happen. So the best way to keep our Buddha nature is the practice of Iwansam. So in the scripture, Master Sotaesan said, believing in and at the same time modeling ourselves to draw on the truth of Iwansam. Our aim is that we should know our minds, which are perfect and complete, utterly impartial and selfless, like Iwansam. That we should nurture our minds, which are perfect and complete, utterly impartial and selfless, like Iwansam. And that we should use our minds, which are perfect and complete, utterly impartial and selfless, like Iwansam. This is the practice of Iwan. So, believe in your Buddha nature, you have it already. And nourishing it when the time comes to nourishing it, right? Through letting go of disturbance, delusion, and wrongdoings. And stay in your Buddha nature. Using the mind, apply the mind in the real situation. So, knowing the great teaching, knowing is great, but we need to really apply it into our actual life. Over and over time, not just once, but whenever time comes, we practice it. And then we can really be with what we know, what we understand. So the knowledge became a wisdom in that point, when we really training ourselves in that way. I found some good example, life example of this practice from the book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. I like this book these days to read. And he talk about our 3 types of brain, knowing, doing, and being mode of our brain. And the example he showed here is someone read the book about compassion and loving kindness. And he's very inspired by the teaching, very happy about it. And then after next moment, he got a phone call from his mother-in-law. She said, I'd like to invite you for dinner next week. And after hang up the phone, his mind is really disturbing because previous experience with his mother-in-law is not great. He hurt his feeling from that home every time. Whenever he go there, he's not really feel good about that. So he doesn't want to go there. That's first feeling he got. And then he think one more time, where is compassion? I read the book, Compassion, how I apply this compassion in mind in this situation. So he think more, and then imagine he's there, meet with his mother-in-law, and prepare himself is there any common ground we can share? Even though she say this, I can do this. So he kind of practices prepare before that thing happens. So he's kind of ready. So when we go there, he's really practicing it. He's not shaken by her comments. He redirects the conversation. And they found some good commonality. They found some good time there. So now his brain, his body experience something new from this relationship. So when we do really applying what we know over time, change your habitual pattern of reaction, change your life, and when we're naturally doing it, that's the state of being. You're being there, naturally your response appropriate way, compassionate way to yourself and others. It's really needed practice, but I think it's really great example that we can practice. So practicing our mind, it takes time. It's like one step by step we can practicing it, and never we are on the way when we know how to practice it. So it takes time, but day by day, moment by moment, you found that benefit from your practice, so you can do it more. So I'd like to close my talk with Master Sotaesan's message of one point in his mind. That's the consistent practice to be with our true nature. In chapter 3, Discourse of Master Sotaesan, in verse 34, he said he was climbing the steep mountain, and the mountain is very steep, so you need to be very mindful and very careful. So he said, when I climbing the steep mountain, the one point in his mind is naturally happen because I need to be very, very careful. But sometimes people fell down when they are walking in flat land or level trail because they are not mindful. Just mindlessly, automatically walk, so they could not see some obstacles, so they fell down. So a practitioner who maintains consistent standards on either steep or level trails, or an easy or difficult task, will achieve the single practice of samadhi, single practice of one point in his mind and peace in our mind. So just keep this in mind in whatever situation you're facing. Just dwell yourself in your spiritual home, which is Buddha nature, perfect, complete, utterly impartial and selfless. So make blooming, make sprout in the world as a Buddha and Bodhisattvas yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.